everyone, welcome back. Whenever we talk about weekly meal prep, I think the first thing that comes to mind is making a long list of meals and preparing everything in advance. But for me, meal prep starts with a little bit of planning. Every family is different, our routines are different, and so are the things we need throughout the week. Before I sit down and decide what to prep, I like to do a very quick audit of what I already have at home. Quickly going through the pantry, checking the fridge for any leftovers, seeing which vegetables needs to be used first or if anything it's nearing its expiry date. All of this becomes part of my pre-planning. If you are someone who is just getting started with meal planning, you can absolutely begin by writing down your breakfast, lunch, and dinner meal ideas for each day of the week. However, I personally like to keep things a little more flexible. So I kind of follow what I call a 3-2-1 method. I plan around 3 main meals for the week, 2 quick or flexible meal options, and then 1 or 2 emergency meals for those really busy days. Along with that, I make a small list of everyday essentials that are running low. Now that the plan is ready, I like to start with task number 1 for today, which is soaking. I simply take out everything on my list that needs soaking and get all of that done together. And I always start with the Idli-dosa batter because this needs a good 5 to 6 hours of soaking before I can grind it. Quite a few of you have asked me for the exact proportions I use, especially after seeing how nicely the batter ferments in the instant pot. So let me quickly share that today. I use 3 cups of idli rice, 1 cup of urad dal, a quarter cup of chana dal, 2 tablespoons of tur dal, and 1 tablespoon of methi or fenugreek seeds. I also use a quarter cup of poha, but I keep that separate and soak it only about 1 or 2 hours before I am ready to grind everything. Next, wash everything really well, add enough water and leave it to soak for at least 5 to 6 hours. And since I'm already doing all the soaking together, I also soak the rajma and chole that are on this week's meal plan. Once they're nicely done, I'll drain them, portion them into zip pouches and transfer them to the freezer for later. And with that, the first task on today's meal prep list is already ticked off. In the meantime, I took out a few things from the fridge and freezer that needed to be used first. I still had some rajma, chana and lobia that I had soaked and frozen during my previous meal prep. So instead of soaking another batch for today's cooking, I'm going to use these up first for the mixed dal we're having for lunch. And many of you have asked what I do with these zip pouches once they're empty. Unless they have become very greasy or needs replacing, I simply wash them well, leave them open to air dry completely and reuse them again for the next batch of freezer prep. Moving on to task number 2, everything that needs boiling or steaming. I'm starting with our mixed dal for today's lunch, and since I also need some cooked rajma later for preparing some tikkis, I'm doing both together. The dal goes directly into the instant pot and I simply place the soaked rajma in a small stainless steel bowl inside and cook them together. While the instant pot takes care of those, I put some milk to boil for fresh homemade paneer and alongside that a few potatoes. Boiled potatoes are actually one of those basics you will almost always find in my weekly meal prep. They're such an useful little backup to have in fridge, whether it's for quick aloo sabji, stuffed parathas, a sandwich, or even some quick chaat. Let's move on to task number 3, washing and prepping the vegetables. And one question I get asked quite often is whether I wash all my vegetables as soon as I bring them home. The answer is actually no. If I want something to last longer, I usually leave it unwashed and wash it closer to when I'm going to use it. So today I'm only washing the vegetables that are part of the three main meals, and the quick meal options I have already planned for the next few days. Since I already know I'll be using the beans and mushrooms for dinner, and I also had some zucchini left from last week that I definitely don't want going to waste, I'll wash, prep, and store them. The rest I'll simply leave as they are and wash them the night before or the day I actually plan to use them. By now, the milk has also come to a boil, so I'll quickly finish making paneer. For 2 liters of milk, I have mixed around 3 tablespoons of vinegar with an equal amount of water. Added it gradually to the hot milk rather than pouring everything in at once, just until the milk curdles and the whey separates. I'll strain it and rinse the paneer really well under cold water to remove any remaining taste of vinegar and then leave it aside to drain and set. I'm not going to use my paneer mold today because most of the paneer I'm going to use in preparing the tikkis later, where I need the crumbled paneer anyway. And before taking the boiling and steaming task off my list, I quickly steam some fresh corn and broccoli as well. Moving on to task number 4. Anything that needs roasting or grinding, I like to take care of them together. Handmade masalas are usually a small part of my weekly or monthly prep. Some basics like roasted cumins and coriander powder I make regularly. Chai masala is something we use almost every single day, and today I'm restocking my homemade chole or chana masala. For this, I'm taking around 2 tablespoons of cumin seeds, 4 tablespoons of whole coriander seeds, 1 tablespoon of black peppercorn, 8 to 10 cloves, 2 to 3 bay leaves, 2 or 3 small cinnamon sticks, 1 star anise, 3 black cardamoms, and 4 to 5 green cardamoms. I'm also adding a few strands of mace, 3 to 4 whole dried red chilies, and finally around 1 tablespoon of dried fenugreek or kasuri methi. I'll dry roast everything together on low flame for just a couple of minutes. And while the spices are cooling down, I quickly set some yogurt aside to make hung curd. This is another little staple I love having ready in the fridge, and it can be used for chutneys, sandwich spreads, dips, marinades, and even quick creamy sauces throughout the week. And by now the roasted spices have cooled down completely, so I'll transfer everything to my grinder and grind it into a nice fine powder. And to the freshly ground spices, I'll be adding all the powdered masalas now, including 1 tablespoon of salt, black salt, amchur or dry mango powder, and red Kashmiri chili powder. Then give everything a good mix and our homemade masala is ready. Although I call this the chole or chana masala, honestly I use it for so much more than just chole. A little goes beautifully into everyday sabjis, chaats, raitas, tikkis, or even sprinkle over a simple salad bowl, and it instantly adds that extra layer of flavor. Finally, I transfer it to a clean, completely dry, airtight jar. And I personally prefer making smaller batches like this so the masala stays fresh and aromatic. And here is a little change of plan because meal prep doesn't always go exactly according to the planner. I had actually dried some tamarind because I wanted to make an instant imli chutney premix, but it hadn't dried enough to grind into a proper powder. And since my tamarind chutney was running low anyway, I decided not to waste it and make a fresh batch instead. So I simply soak the tamarind in boiling water for about 5 to 10 minutes. Meanwhile, I quickly prepared a simple spice blend with roasted cumin, black peppercorns, and fennel seeds. Once the tamarind had softened, I strained it really well and extracted as much of pulp as possible. And don't throw away that leftover tamarind residue. I keep mine in the fridge and use it for cleaning some of my copper and brass puja items, which will actually come in very handy with the festive season coming up. The seedless tamarind pulp goes back into the pan along with about 1 cup of jaggery powder. I let this cook for another 4 to 5 minutes, then goes in our freshly prepared spice blend, about 2 tablespoons of Kashmiri red chili powder, some chaat masala and black salt according to taste. And finally, I'm adding some watermelon seeds. Once cooled, this goes straight into the fridge. It's such a handy chutney to have ready for chaat, dahi vada, samosa, tikkis, or even those quick yogurt and tikki bowls that I make quite often. If you have liked the meal prep ideas so far, please like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. It will mean a lot. Up next, I'll be preparing two dishes together, and whenever I can combine similar jobs, I try to do them together. So I'm preparing two completely different snacks side by side today. One is a protein-rich rajma and paneer tikki for us. Another one is a simple broccoli, corn and potato bites. Something that's mild, kid-friendly and really handy for lunch boxes or after-school snack. For the first mixture, I'm using the rajma that we cooked earlier, and for the second, I have taken some boiled potatoes along with the steamed broccoli. Next, mash them really well with a potato masher. Then I added freshly made paneer to both the mixtures, plenty of freshly chopped coriander, boiled corn for the potato bites, and from here I will season each one differently. For our rajma paneer tikkis, I am keeping the flavors very Indian. I am adding all the usual basic spices and seasoning along with around 1 tablespoon of rice flour to help bind everything together. I'll also add little olive oil, around 2 tablespoons. You can of course use whichever cooking oil you prefer and mix everything really well until it holds its shape. Then I simply take small portions and shape into flat tikkis. Finally gave them a very light coating of suji or semolina, which gives the outside a lovely crunch once they are cooked. Rajma and paneer together make these quite filling and give us a nice protein-rich option to have ready for busy days. I can simply take out a couple, air fry or shallow fry them and serve them with chutney and yogurt, or turn them into a quick chaat, put them inside a wrap, or use them to build an easy lunch bowl. And for the second mixture, I am keeping the flavors much simpler and more kid-friendly. You can really customize this depending on what your child enjoys. Peas, carrots, or any finely chopped vegetables would work nicely here. Then I added some grated mozzarella, a little olive oil, and rice flour to bring everything together. Once mixed, shape them into these small bite-sized pieces, and just like the rajma tikki, give them a light coating of suji for that slightly crispy outside. I'll keep a few ready for us and freeze the rest in portions. Whenever needed, I can simply air fry a small batch. They're such a convenient little snack to have ready, especially for lunch boxes or those busy evenings. Moving on to the next task, everything that needed blending. And before moving on to the dosa batter, the first thing I wanted to tick off was a quick batch of powdered oats. I almost always keep some oat flour ready because it comes in really handy for baking. I use it to replace part of maida in cookies, pancakes, muffins, even some of my homemade breads. It takes barely a minute to make, so that's another little basic restock for the week. By now, everything we soaked for the idli-dosa batter earlier had softened really well, so it was finally time to grind it. I ground the rice and dal mixture in batches using some of the same water in which they had been soaking. And I like to keep the final batter slightly grainy rather than making it completely smooth. And remember the poha we kept aside earlier? I had soaked that separately about 2 hours before grinding and added it to the final batch. Once everything was ground, I combined all the batches in a large bowl, adding around 1 tablespoon of sugar and mixed the batter really well with my hand. Mixing it thoroughly helps incorporate some air and distributes everything evenly, which helps create a good environment for fermentation. I then place the bowl inside my instant pot and use the yogurt mode to give the batter a consistent warm environment. Depending on the weather, mine usually takes around 8 to 10 hours to ferment. And this is what I woke up to the following morning. Beautifully risen, airy and well fermented batter. Honestly, once I see my batter rise like this, it feels like half of the week's breakfast planning is already sorted. And before taking the blending task off, I quickly made the ginger garlic paste as well. Blended mine using as little water as possible, adding just a little oil to help everything come together smoothly. Then portion it into different size cubes and freeze them so I can simply take out exactly what I need while cooking. It's one of those basic preps that takes a little time today but saves me from peeling and grinding ginger and garlic every single day. Meanwhile, the first stage of my bread dough had also risen beautifully. Earlier, I had mixed yeast with lukewarm water and milk, along with some whole wheat and ragi flour, and left it covered until it became nicely bubbly and almost double in volume. To this, I added some oil, salt, the remaining flour, flaxseed powder, and a handful of mixed seeds, and kneaded everything together for our homemade ragi bread. I have shared the detailed bread making process recently in one of my videos, so rather than repeating all the steps here, I will leave the video link in the description box in case you want to check it. And since I was already in baking mode and schools are starting again this week, I also wanted to prepare a small batch of cookies to have ready for snack time. For these cranberry pistachio cookies, I added 75 grams of softened butter, 40 grams of caster sugar to 1 cup of freshly powdered oats we had prepared earlier, along with around 2 tablespoons of maida. Then went in some chopped pistachios and dried cranberries. Brought everything together gently until it formed a soft cookie dough. Then I shaped the mixture into small cookies and finished each one with some extra pistachios and cranberries on top. Once shaped, I transferred them to the fridge for around 40 to 45 minutes to warm up before baking. And that's one little homemade snack sorted for the coming school week. While the bread dough was proving and these cookies were resting in the fridge, I used that little window of time to make another freezer staple, the basic Indian gravy masala. It's simply onions, ginger, garlic, and tomatoes cooked down really well with the everyday Indian spices until everything becomes thick and you start seeing the oil separate. Once cooled, I portion and freeze this into smaller batches. I've shared the detailed recipe before as well, so I will leave that linked in the description box. By now, the bread dough had rested beautifully, so I shaped it and transferred it to my bread mold. Then brushed the top lightly with some milk and sugar for that beautiful golden finish. Sprinkled over a few pumpkin seeds and left it to rest again for another 15 to 20 minutes. By now, both the bread and our chilled cookies were ready for the oven at 180 degrees Celsius. The cookies took around 10 to 12 minutes while the bread needed roughly 25 to 30 minutes to bake through. We are almost at the end of what has definitely been a long meal prep day, but this is the part that makes all the effort feel worthwhile. because so many little jobs for the coming weeks are already taken care of. The imli chutney had cooled completely, so that went into a clean glass jar. The vegetables had dried really well too, so I prepared a large batch of mixed vegetables that I quickly stir fry during the week and pair with paneer, chicken, or whatever protein we are having that day.
Searching for something that ain't lost. Have we got our lines crossed? We're wasting time on stuff.
The remaining vegetables went into their containers, and for the coriander, I used the salad spinner first, dried it really well, and then chopped and stored it in a container lined with kitchen paper towel. This way, it easily lasts up to 14 days in the fridge.
We fall apart, and I won't dare to say.
The soaked rajma and chana were portioned into freezer pouches, and our base gravy went into smaller portions as well, ready for the freezer. And just like that, the fridge and freezer were looking much more prepared for the week ahead. By then, the cookies were coming out of the oven too. And just look at them. I had made them thinking they would be perfect for the school snack box, but honestly, they didn't even survive the evening. They were finished the very same day. And our homemade ragi bread turned out beautifully too. And after a full day of meal prepping, I definitely wasn't going to make an elaborate dinner. So I quickly blended some of our homemade paneer and hunkered with fresh coriander, chili flakes and few basic seasonings to make this creamy, protein-rich sauce. In a pan, I sauteed some chopped onion and garlic, added the mushrooms, seasoned them with salt and freshly ground black pepper, cooked everything together for just a few minutes. Then went in that beautiful sauce we had just prepared. And look at how creamy and delicious it turned out. I simply finished it with little chaat masala and plenty of fresh coriander and paired it with some simple stir-fried rice. And with that, dinner was sorted too. It was definitely a long meal prep day, but knowing that so many breakfast, snacks, meal components, and everyday basics are already taken care of makes the coming weeks so much easier. If you have enjoyed spending the day with me, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to the channel, and I will see you in the next one. Till then, take care. Bye bye. Happy homemaking.